Today, there's a lot going on in the world, and I think it's a good idea to get some black men that can speak for themselves. Black men that are fathers, black men that are successful, black men that have a hands-on approach to the way they live their lives and the way they're shaping their children's lives. We did an episode a couple months back called the Dad Rant, and people are still asking me when I'm going to do part two, and here it is. But this one has a little bit of a twist because there's so much going on. I think preparing your children for the future and preparing your children for what they might face is super, super important. And we kind of joked a lot about fatherhood before, about the difficulties and how your kids pee on you and stuff like that. So this is a little bit more of a serious topic, but I do think that it's cool that we have a bunch of guys that are not overly serious people. And I believe in serious topics, but not making them heavy and too deep. I think when things get too deep, you lose your sense of joy, even though you're going through something difficult, right? So I'm going to introduce everybody and give them a moment to kind of tell you all what they do and where to find them, social media, websites, things like that. So I'm going to start with my man, Ant Lee, because I see he's about to pick up his water and that's awkward. And I think that kind of thing is funny.
Well, Anthony Lee here, A-Lee Real Estate. Husband, father of two boys, ages 5 and 2, realtor, investor, just trying to figure out in life and put my family in position to win.
Of course. Sean
Saunders. I have one daughter. She's 7 years old. I do a lot, but I think what most people will know about me is that I'm a teacher, a professor, a communicator, a ghostwriter. So if it has something to do with stories, if it has something to do with motivation, that's kind of what I do.
Cool. Daryl?
I am Daryl Lee. I'm a father of 4. One is 13, one 14, 6 going on 7. That's my daughter. And I have 2 twin boys who are 14 months now. I'm in IT, and I have a business on the side ran by my father and me called TC Breakthrough. It's TCSP, but the website is tcbreakthrough.com. Shameless plug. And that's me.
Gotcha. Cool. So I think that it's I think it'd be good to kind of get right to it. I think that there's been a lot of things now going on in the news about race and classes and everything. I think there's been more now going on in the news about race than any time that probably all of us can remember. Looking back, going through history and things like that, like obviously you have Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and people like that. But I think this is the first time where race is at the forefront of the news for this extended period of time because of the riots and things like that have been going on. What's been interesting to me is I think this is the first time that our issues as Black and brown people have been put on display for the whole world to see. I think for the first time we have help from other countries, other races, and all sorts of people. And that's not something that we're really accustomed to. Typically, our cries go unheard and no one does anything about them. So I want you guys' take, first and foremost, this is on the heels of a quarantine that no one saw coming. In the midst of a recession, people are out of work. And I think we've been home now for 4 months, I think it is, with limited places to go, right? So, Sean, what kind of things have you been doing with your daughter to kind of keep her occupied? Because I know your schedule is crazy with the travel and things like that. But what have you been doing so that, keep her mind engaged and get her to have a little bit of fun?
Yeah, so it has been difficult. We've been quarantined since March 15th. I work in Chicago. I live in New Jersey, so I catch about 4 flights a week. And Crazy. When I saw everything shut down, I immediately caught the next flight to New Jersey, and then things got worse. Mm-hmm. My daughter's school basically said that they're home for a couple weeks, then a couple weeks became a month, then
Yeah.
then a month became the rest of the year. And so at first it was fun because she's used to me traveling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a chance to create a new rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
But then you run out of pictures to paint, you run out of crayons that aren't broken. And so I started spending money on Trolls. There's this new movie, Trolls,
the
Trolls
too.
movie.
Yeah.
And you can't get it on demand. You got to pay like $20 a wop every time. I probably paid for Trolls like 15 times because when she didn't have anything else to do, I'm like, yo, go watch Trolls.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting because she's learning words that I didn't learn at her age, like pandemic, like quarantine, corona. And it's really interesting how that's shaping her life right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you got 2 terrorists over there. So how's it been going for you guys?
Well, the problem is it's really one. He does the igniting of everything. The youngest one. The oldest, I kind of could keep him occupied and we could do stuff. The youngest, he like, nah, I ain't feeling it. So, so I mean, it's honestly, it's had its ups and downs. For the most part, though, I would say overall is. While I was talking, so today for me, I actually talked to my therapist for the first time today since the pandemic, and we was talking about all of this, and I told him like, yo, I realized by 4 or 5 o'clock, my patience is thin. So, he's like, yo, you got to work on, your routine, but also setting them boundaries throughout the day. I'm like, we ain't got no more boundaries right now. We all out of timeouts. We all out of all of that stuff. Food, the food go every 3 days.
Yeah.
So I mean, for us, it's just like before we did this, as well as a couple minutes late, man, we went for a walk around the block like 6 times just to try to get them to midday, tire out, so they could be ready for the night, so they could go to bed. So, it's just, it's constantly changing. I don't think it's no type of formula at this point. We just trying to enjoy the day and see what it brings us.
Yeah, has everybody here been to Lowe's 450 times? Lowe's or Home Depot? Because I just go there every day for stuff. I don't even know why. Sometimes I'm just there.
Right, Lowe's and Target.
Yeah, yeah.
Lowe's. I never seen so many people at Lowe's. Like if you don't go before 9 o'clock now, like just Lowe's, especially or Home Depot, like forget about it. Like, and now they done blew up the one Lowe's, so it's only one Lowe's in the area. Yep. Everybody going to State Road.
Yep. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
I didn't know this many people had houses that everybody needed to work on something.
How many flowers can you plant, right? How many little flowers can you possibly plant?
Right.
I can't say nothing. I've planted trees. We got flowers out front on the porch. It's all kind of stuff.
People, you building stuff that you see on Pinterest now.
I built a patio about 2 weeks ago, so I'm dead up. I'll send you the pictures and everything. Even had my daughter out there with the shovel, helping scoop. So,
see, I saved you for last because you have the most chaos going on at home. Yeah. Like I see people like Sean and his pictures with his daughter are cute. She's always doing like civilized things. And Aunt's kids are like mine. The second one is crazy. The older one you can occupy them, but the little one you can't. I don't know what it would be like if there were 4 of them and me. And I know it's you and your wife, but like you're still outnumbered by 2.
Yeah, I'm greatly outnumbered. Like I got a little bit lucky because my wife is a nurse, and the way that the daycares are set up, some of the daycares stayed open for essential workers, so we still able to get them in daycare. But they got this rule where if their temperature goes up to 99 degrees, they got to stay home for 7 days. So I mean, that took like 3 weeks out of that right there. So I mean, I got lucky there. But again, she's a night nurse, so at night, I mean, with the twins. Some days out of the week, I got to put them down and get them up, solo dolo, which we got the routine down, but that don't mean they don't be wearing my patients out, man.
Right? Yeah, you got to get on that schedule, right?
Yeah, man. The schedule was tight, but man, they still be driving me crazy sometimes. They still like knocking stuff over and fighting, and they both too. So they just rumble nonstop, man. Nonstop.
Man, I try my best to get my boys out of the house. Like I try to on Saturdays, because I've still been working since I work technically for the Department of Defense. I'm at work every day. I haven't missed a beat, right? And I try to get them out, especially on Saturdays. It's like 8 or 9 in the morning. We're out hitting baseballs, throwing the football, all kind of stuff. Just so when I get back home and it's 11, now they're asleep until 2 or 3, and it's some sort of some sort of quiet, right?
Right.
So I saw a story about a little boy from New York. He's 13 years old, and the police approached him, and they thought that he had a gun. Instead of finding out, they opened up and shot him 19 times. And as a father, I couldn't imagine getting that phone call that something like that has happened from a institution that was supposed to be the one to protect you and not necessarily supposed to be the bad guy. The thing that I have the most trouble with, is figuring out a way, because my kids are still small. So figuring out a way eventually to explain to them how to navigate and why they have to navigate differently than other people with the police, right? Daryl, your take on police officers is, so I'm gonna tell y'all a story real quick, right? That has nothing to do with brutality. I remember I was in the car with Daryl one time, and a cop pulled up behind us. When I tell y'all, this fool parked and we got out like we lived there, and he just parked and got out and started walking, so we didn't get pulled over. Like, so Daryl's perspective on police, I think, is has always been relevant. It's a little funny, but it's also very serious and smart. So how would you approach, I guess, Daryl, trying to prepare your sons for just encountering police? We'll get to the other people later, but we'll start with the police.
Well, just to go based off my last story, the last story that I taught my oldest was to treat police like a hungry, rabies-infested pit bull. And I know that sounds wild, but think about it like this. Like, you come across a pit bull, like in the street, you're not going to make no quick, sudden movements.
Mm-hmm.
He might get at you. You're not going to outrun a pit bull because it's a pit bull. He's probably faster than you. You're not going to jump on the cars. Like, you gotta really use your head and really be cautious. Not make no sudden movements, not do anything to aggravate that pit bull, because you never know when it's going to come at you. Because when it does, it got you. You in its vice grips, it's just going to tear you apart. So that's part of the lesson that I taught him. But now, in light of certain things that's happened, I don't even know. Like, all the lessons my pop gave me, like, you got to wear certain clothes, you should buy certain cars, and don't wear this white t-shirt, don't wear your hood in this store, stuff like that. A lot of those rules help me make it. But some of those rules now, I'm seeing cats that's like, in the news getting killed, even following those rules.
Yeah.
So it's more rules that's coming about. But I mean, all you can do is pass down the lessons that you learned from, your old heads, the ones you picked up on your own, like hopping out the car and pretending you wasn't even driving.
Right.
And just being extra cautious when the cops is around, and you know what I mean? And just treat them like they angry dog, and you got to move carefully and cautiously, not to aggravate it or upset it.
Well, I think one of the most frustrating things just in life in general is doing what you're supposed to do, and it still doesn't work out the way you want.
Absolutely.
Right. You prepare yourself, you work on, you practice, you craft, whatever it is that you do, and then you still don't get the result that you want. And in this situation, it's not even the only result that you can want is to make it home safely. Right. And I've had experiences where my car was too nice, or I lived in the wrong neighborhood, or things like that. Sean, I want to ask you about if you've had encounters just because you're in the wrong place and the police don't like that, or because your car is too nice, or because whatever, you know what I mean? Because I could go down the list and I could talk all day about that, but I kind of want to hear from somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened so much that I actually think I'm going to downgrade my cars because it feels now that it brings too much attention. I've had luxury cars since I was 21. I was telling this story last night. My mother, after I graduated summa cum laude a year early, she bought me a brand new Mercedes. And so there's this platinum Mercedes. It's a 2-seat convertible type car. And it was so selective that they probably made about 8 in the country when it came out. So I'm like 21 years old. And my first experience with getting pulled over by a cop, I was across the street from a church in the urban part of Newark. I mean, the hood part of Newark, New Jersey. And about to get out and go to a rehearsal. I'm already parked, and the cop starts like blowing his sirens behind me. So he gets out the car. Long story short, he's yelling at me, yelling at my friend. She has crutches, and he demands that I get out the car. Like, no introduction, no anything. I move too slow. He grabs my keys. He says, "Get out the effing car." And then he proceeds to really take advantage of the moment. So I'm like, "Sir, can you just tell me what you pulled me over for?" He's like, "Shut the F up." And he goes back to dispatch. By that point, 2 more cop cars come. And they're now threatening to arrest me, and they still haven't told me what happened. So 10 minutes go by. He comes up and says, "We saw that you were driving the same car as another stolen car just like this in this area." So because that was straight up BS, you know, because of the make and model of the car, he was just trying to just have something on paper. But the part that I think I was so disappointed about it, Rich, was that I had no faith in the police system. That if I called and complained, that they were going to actually do something about it. So every year since then, I've probably gotten pulled over at least 4 or 5 times. I grew up in a white neighborhood. I now live in a predominantly white neighborhood. My daughter's the only Black girl in her school. So every time I take the dog out for a walk, I have to look behind my back because I'm noticing that there's this prejudice, this justice. So I've been in every climate. When I first moved to Chicago and I was driving my Porsche, I'm driving up to the stop sign, and the first thing the guy does when he pulls me over, he says, whose car is this? Now, my stepfather's white. He would never go to my stepfather and ask, whose car is this?
Never.
I mean, first ask me for my license and registration, then tell me why you pull me over. So it just speaks to the fact that we have a target on our back. And I've experienced it not just with white cops. I've experienced it with some of us. You know, just this assumption that you had to be selling drugs. You had to be doing something that you shouldn't have been doing to be able to afford what you had.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that's almost scary about having any measure of success, right? Because if you live in a particular area or you frequent a particular area, it's almost like you're not supposed to. And if you can afford to be here, what do? It can't be anything stand up. It has to be something illegal for you to be here, right? You know what I mean? It's almost like, no, actually, I didn't. No, I work just like you work. You know what I mean? And I think the part that I don't appreciate the most from those kinds of encounters is that I pay taxes like everybody else. So basically, I'm paying for someone to pull me over at will whenever they feel like it.
Absolutely.
Like what a kick in the balls. You know what I mean? Like I'm financing you being a complete idiot toward me for no reason at all. And
that's aggravating. I never even thought about that. That just pissed me off a little bit more.
And here's the thing, though. And here's the thing. I'm paying to get pulled over, right? And if they pull you over and they say that your license is suspended or any of that other stuff that they randomly come up with, even when you prove it right, you still got to pay unnecessary stuff just to get back in the clear. And don't be on a run quickly to Wendy's with a do-rag or a hoodie on. Right? Because you got to do a whole makeover before they get to your car out of fear that you selling drugs. You know what I'm saying? Now Richard is probably selling drugs, but the others of us on this call, we probably are doing what we're supposed to do.
Well, you're going to get muted now. Thanks. So Ant, right now, Ant, you live in the city, right? How has it been for you the last, I don't know, 7 days or so? Because I don't, and I live nearby, and I hear bombs going off until 2:00 in the morning.
Right. So I literally live 5 minutes from the shopping center that they looted, they took down. Don't help, I got an ATM that they blew up. They weren't successful the first night. They came back 2 nights later with more dynamite or whatever they had and really blew it up. So it didn't. So one, I'll just say, like, yo, to try to keep your composure for the sake of your family has been one task.
Yeah.
Then just to keep your composure for your own self, you know, because you don't know what's the next. Every day is something different. And so, like, the bomb going off at 10:30 at night waking my son up in tears. Mind you, I'm in a basement and I hear him scream and yell. My oldest said that, and he's like, "What is that?" Because it shook the block.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. It really hit home that, like, yo, it's really no picks out here. Like, so we talk about police brutality, then we talk about casualty of war per se. You know, the community is also part of the casualty, which is the sad part. So it's like you said, we damned if we do, damned if we don't. So I mean, I just automatically went into not survive, well, protective mode. I'll say protective mode, and the type time I'm on is, you know, I sleep with the little thing next to the bed. I sleep with the big thing, you know, right by the door. So it went from one extreme to the next now, and now, you know, we got to do a survey of the front and the back of the house, make sure the security camera is going just before we lay our head at night. So you talk about, I could imagine having, you know, babies, twins, or anything like that sleep, but let alone, you know, even without the young kids, like, all right, I'm sleeping on eggshells per se, because I just don't know what's next.
Is that something that makes you feel like, oh, I immediately have to move?
Nah, so I mean, to Sean's point, it's like, look, I could go live in a nice neighborhood, and they could get mad at me just because I'm black in the neighborhood. Because, you know, they got I always go in, like, as a realtor, I look at certain things when I go in the neighborhoods. I'm looking for, you know, our flag, or I'm looking for certain nationality flags, and then I look for, we support the police flag poles or grass things. So, you know, I can imagine, you know, the different things you see in different neighborhoods. So I mean, for me, and I even struggle with this for my kids for school. Like, I want my kids to get a great education, because I also want them to meet different people that I wouldn't necessarily be able to connect them with, but I could pay for it through education. But at the same token, they don't get the teachers that look like them, or they don't have the classmates to also help them, that, you know, that thing we learn just naturally growing up in certain environments we grew up in. You know, so it's like that whole dynamic of, again, it being a gift and a curse kind of thing. So it's like, I want to move, but I don't necessarily think I need to move to the suburbs per se, because it's safer. Like, if it goes down, I'd rather be in my neighborhood, because when it goes down, I feel better knowing that me and whoever else on the block, we probably going to align with the same thing of protecting our block first, versus I got a 50-50 chance in the suburbs of, they might be with me or they might be against me.
You don't know.
You know, that Purge movie, it haunts me.
Man. No, you know what's crazy about that, man? I watched the first one, and when the second one was coming out, I said, "There's no way I'm watching that," because I do not enjoy things where I'm like, you know what, this might actually happen. I'm good.
Right.
Because I only want to face that if I have to. I don't want to face it in a movie and call it entertainment. What you gonna say, Darryl?
No, I was about to co-sign that, man, because now, you know, in the position that I'm in right now, like, I moved to the safe, you know, neighborhood, and it just made me realize there's technically no safe neighborhood, because, like, I look around my neighborhood, and before I moved here, I was like, oh, this is it, this is, we done made it, and now I look around, I'm like, I'm seeing Trump signs, and all of a sudden I keep seeing the same car right up and down the block with the Confederate flag, and I'm like, okay, so
on the back of the truck, on the bumper.
Exactly. So I still got the same feeling of always looking over my shoulder and keeping my eyes and head on the swivel and everything like that. But now I just feel like my kids they aren't as street savvy now, because street savviness gives you world savviness.
You could take that in the office, or you could take it to the street.
Exactly. So now it's like, man, but then at the same time, I don't necessarily want to take them back to certain areas, because now they, you know, how are they going to make it? You know what I mean? My son is 14. So I can't just take him out of where he grew up in the suburbs and then say, all right, we back to West Philly with it. That's not fair either. So, neighborhood, you know what I mean?
So can I jump in there, Rich? Yeah. So I was going to say, so, like, literally that is like my biggest battle. So, like, I tell myself, I try to balance it out with sports activities in the community, because even I live in the community, but don't do a lot of stuff in the community. Like, it's selective things, because I know some things you can do, some things you can't do. But then I also have to pick and choose what I do outside of the community kind of thing as well. because I also want my child to have, like you said, talk about having street wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, you also want him to have that other culture education as well. So it's like whether he go to an HBCU or whether he go to a predominantly white school, you know, he'll be able to adapt and make the best of his situation. He won't be shell shocked, as my grandpa would say.
Mm-hmm. My it's difficult as a dad. I think we're the ones that are supposed to be the protectors all the time. And every time somebody, and you all know this, when the baby has a bad dream, they're looking for you. They're not looking for mom. They're looking for you. What do you do though when you don't feel safe either? Because when you do all the things that you're supposed to do, and now everyone else feels safe, you know, everyone, you made it to the nice neighborhood and everybody else feels safe, but you know that you're still not safe. How do you handle that constant feeling of being unsafe when all you're trying to do is just progress like anybody else?
Right. So that's that you know, sleeping on eggshells or being on pins and needles kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, again, I'm gonna always advocate, yo, especially for Black brothers, yo, you either got to have a confidant that you could talk to, you know, things like this that we're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
or like, I mean, I really find it helpful to do the professional therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you can talk to I feel like we can always talk to our spouses,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just some stuff like I still struggle to talk to my spouse about, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be honest about that. But it's like, I feel, because, and I think it's more so just like you said, if I'm protecting everybody, but I might not want them to know, like, I'm also nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, things might not be, you know, always on the up and up. So we can talk about it, but you might not always want to fully disclose. So it's like, yo, at the end of the day, if you can get somebody to speak to about that stuff, you know, instead of just trying to keep it all in,
Yeah.
like, yo, I think that kind of helps with getting through it.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to ask the same question to Sean too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having Black children produces a kind of fear.
Mm-hmm.
But because I have a daughter, I think my fear is different. So I don't have a son, but I can imagine if I had a son, my training would look like, listen, if you get pulled over by the cops, you know, do this, this, and that, because Black men, it's like a disproportionate number of deaths, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
let's not forget, even with Ahmaud Arbery and even with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor got shot down.
Yep.
And she was a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that bullets really care if you're a woman or a man.
Absolutely not.
But as a brother, like when I go to bed at night and I feel the fear of this moment, I'm thinking not about how to protect my daughter if she gets pulled over, but what things I have in place if I die.
Mm-hmm.
So the question becomes like, do I have enough in the savings for her if
Mm-hmm.
I die? Mm-hmm. Do I have enough for my funeral if I die? Do I have things in place? And how would I protect her even if I'm not here?
Yeah.
It's just very personal. So for me, I love what the brother said about like therapy. I go to my therapist every Friday, 4 o'clock. But above that, I have got to protect myself from a lot of the news media that's being covered. Yeah. So like I committed not to watching George Floyd's death. Like even when I saw the picture, I committed to myself, I cannot put myself through perpetual trauma in that way, because when I see a Black man die, I see myself die.
Right.
And that stays in my head. So even when people have asked, I'm like, I don't need to see a picture to see what we've seen for the last 400 years, bro.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things as a dad that I think through. And I think when you have children, particularly young children that don't understand the term racism, and they're super naive and open to everybody, and you want to protect them, but you also don't want to traumatize them too early. Sometimes it's a difficult balance to strike.
Right. And that's what I find myself wondering, you know, what's the age that you have that conversation? How realistic do you paint that picture? Because one of my sons, my older son, is a bit more internal with what he's feeling. And if I tell him something, he'll say okay in a moment, but then for the next 2 weeks, he's asking me little questions here and there to kind of get a little bit of a better understanding. My 2-year-old is a little bit more like a psycho. Like I could say, hey man, you should be careful of the police. And I'm pretty sure he would say back to me like, nah, Dad, I think they should be scared of me. Like his demeanor is just completely different, man. So trying to navigate how to introduce one thing to one child versus it's already hard enough to do it one time. Trying to do it twice at two different stages for two different personalities is a lot to even just think about, let alone to have to execute it. Because that's not a conversation they can have with mom. That's something that has to, come from dad, if at all possible. One of the things, it's funny. I was talking to one of my coworkers actually today, and he was asking me like, well, are there ways that in the workplace you experience any sort of racism? He said, because I know I probably won't see it because I'm white. He's like, but what happens? And I said, well, if someone references a rap song, they automatically ask you, like, you're supposed to know every rap song ever written in life. You know what I mean? Don't ask me about Vanilla Ice. That's the terrible thing to ask me. If I know the answer, somebody needs to slap me, right? But I think I can imagine. I don't have a quote unquote like corporate job like most people. I don't have to wear a suit and tie and khakis and things like that to work every day. But for a person like Daryl, because I know you're still in IT, right?
Yeah, I'm in IT for a bank.
So what kind of ways do you, I'll ask it this way. Do you ever find yourself having to shrink a little bit to fit the mold and not necessarily piss off the people?
All the time. See, I'm not, so I'm a manager for my particular site.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple of sites. So IT wise, I pretty much make all the decisions for the Delaware office, which puts me like at a good place. I'm not super high, but I'm not, super low either. I'm in an awkward spot. And then when some people come up, they're like, okay, so who do I need to talk to about getting a new laptop and be able to work from home? It's like, and one of my guys would be like, oh, you got to talk to Daryl. I got to talk to him? He's the manager? I mean,
yeah.
And I have folks who literally, I got this one guy, he was entitled to, I won't say entitled, but his job position did allow him to get a 16-inch MacBook, one of the newest, fastest out, right? But his manager didn't put the request in on time. He ended up getting, like a standard Dell PC.
Yeah, something else.
Then he found out he had to come to me and he had to ask me to get the MacBook. That was a year and a half ago. He is still on this, and I will not upgrade him until he asks me. And it's it's not the blatant, overt things; it's the microaggressions that take me to 10 and make me want to react, but I can't because I have a responsibility to other people. But I'm still working out how to deal with some of those things. But as of now, for corporate America, I read that rule book and I play every single move by that rule book, and I make sure I'm 2 steps ahead and twice as fast. That way they can't come back with no foolishness on it.
You know what I noticed that people do? If you're on the sidewalk and there are white people walking toward you, I notice a lot of people, they will move out of the way. Because if you bump someone, if you get too close to someone, whatever, you end up like the guy in Central Park. Now all of a sudden you're attacking the white people. You didn't do anything but stand your ground, right? Sean, I want you to talk a little bit about, because I think you're going to enjoy this question a little bit. I want you to talk a little bit about the insecurity that can breed. Because over time, no one's going to tell, I don't say no one, but for the most part, we're not going to be told, well, you're just not going to be good enough. And we're not told that enough to breed it into us, but we're shown it all the time. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about trying to be a parent and not transferring that insecurity, because it's there for all of us. I just don't think we wear it and notice it.
Yeah. So I think overcompensation is real, especially when you're a single father. You have a guilt complex, right? So is my absence in the home a direct impact on other things that are affecting my child?
Yeah.
So then there's that one thing. So when she gets to your house, it's like, I got a surprise for you every day. It's like, no, I can't have a surprise for you every day. I cannot create that as a norm. But when it comes to like overprotection from things you've experienced, my therapist always says, answer the question your child asks and nothing more, because they're asking you the question based on what they're ready for. And sometimes as an educator, I want to give them everything. So when she's like, Daddy, Sally didn't want to play with me today. I'm like, listen, you don't got to play with Sally because Sally is not your friend. In fact, Sally doesn't like you, your mama, or me. So you can just F Sally and tell Sally to go somewhere down the street because they don't even know how to make real pancakes. It's like, okay. And so instead of going off, because I done had a trigger from like when John Christopher with the little braid, remember the white boys just had a little braid in the back of their head and he used to braid that. That's why they hate us now. But anyway, see, I just did it there.
I knew you would like the question.
I'm triggered, and I import my own trauma onto an innocent child.
Yeah.
And so, as a parent, I have learned to like calibrate. Like, okay, step back. What is she actually saying? She's saying my feelings are hurt because somebody didn't want to play with me. That somebody wasn't because she was white. It was just I wanted to play. Yeah. And so as a parent, I have to dissect actually what she's asking for and give her that. And I think discernment, intuition, your hunch, they're just moments. Like if you're watching a television show and you see an opportunity to like take that conversation to another level, then let's go ahead and have it. You know, my daughter saw the news at my grandparents' house. And because there was so much hysteria going on with Black people screaming, she comes to her mom and says, I'm afraid that I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Well, when that conversation comes, then it's like, well, baby, why do you feel that way? Well, this is a story that has nothing to do with you and you're not going to die. You know what I mean? But my point is sometimes your children will tell you what they're ready for. And that's how I have learned to measure what I say so I don't do too much out of my own insecurity.
Because it's wild to me when I think about that, because the same way we can transfer that kind of insecurity or that feeling of being inadequate, right? Is almost the same way, because it's almost the same way racism is transferred. It's something that happens to the parents have it ingrained in them, and then now they just transfer it over, sometimes not even knowing that that's what's happening. You know, I don't think that everybody that has something to say that is racially insensitive or striking to us is always even being intentional. I think sometimes it's just how people were raised and they never experienced anybody to show them any different. You know, I remember comedians years ago, like in the 90s, especially, all white people got good credit. There's a lot of white people on meth, so I don't know if their credit is really that good. You know, I think that sometimes we have these perceptions of each other, and they are not equal because we don't have equal power. My perception of someone else doesn't necessarily change their upward mobility in their life. I can think whatever I want about white people. They ain't gonna stop them from moving into my neighborhood. However, when the shoe's on the other foot, it's different because they have the biggest gang in the world. That's also called the police force, right? and that's in their pocket all the time. So one of the challenges that I've found in growing up is what to do with the emotion that comes along with being angry and not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and your sons are, again, the same age as mine, right? How important is it for you to teach them now what to do with their emotions so they don't explode at the wrong time later and it gets them in a whole lot of trouble? Because if you're trying to move up and you're trying to put them in schools, and a lot of times those schools are schools that have kids that don't look like them, that fight that they get into isn't going to be like a fight that me and you would have gotten to in school. No one's writing a note home because I got in a fight in the lunchroom. However, you go to these white schools and your little Black children get in a fight, it's going to be a problem.
So y'all seen that movie Raising Dion on Netflix? Yeah, so that scene where the boy took his watch and the principal basically wanted to expel him, and it was the other kid's fault. Like you said, like, yo, that's a real thing. And my son even said, like, Daddy, that wasn't fair. And I'm like, how do I explain, like, it was deeper than just him getting in trouble?
Right, yeah.
But I think for me, same thing, I teeter that line. My youngest son, I don't think there's going to be too much communication because, like, his temperament is just different. Like, he going to hit you and you going to have to deal with that. He hit you because you did whatever to him.
Yeah. And
I'm honestly okay with that because I know for him, he's not, I feel like it's different when you don't second guess it. You react. Like, yo, so it's also I would be like, yo, son, you're going to have to deal with the consequences for your actions. My oldest son, he's a communicator. Like you gotta, piss him off kind of thing for him to get riled up.
Yeah.
But his brother, like good, bad, or indifferent, his brother come defend the older brother.
Yeah.
So like I think I honestly don't have an answer for it yet, other than I try to just instill to my kids, no matter what, at the end of the day, I'm a back y'all good, bad, or indifferent. And at the end of the day, y'all tell me what's going on, tell me the truth, tell your mom the truth, and we just communicate it one way or another. But I will say overall, like my oldest son, both my kids communicate pretty good, but my oldest son, like you said, he internalizes, he's very inquisitive, and he's gonna speak his mind, good, bad, or indifferent. Like today he gave me like a 5-minute rant about how I let his little brother dismantle his toy and how that made him feel. And I'm like, kid, you can put it back together. Like, why are we going through this? But that's how he does. So like, and I had to learn for myself them fears that I have, like, yo, you too soft because you communicate. I had to get that out of me. Like my wife, like, yo, don't tell him that. Like, let him communicate because he needs to be an open communicator. And that's something I'm even learning at 33, just still how to communicate.
Because I think that's super important, right? I think we are taught from such a young age that communicating is for women, right? Like, or being in your feelings is for women. And I think that the message should more so be being out of control with your emotions is what you want to stay away from, not the emotions. Because what happens for us a lot of times is like we don't learn how to process them. And then we end up doing a bunch of random things that don't make sense, that'll land us in a whole lot of trouble and give us a whole lot of hell, all because we're running from a feeling, right? And some people their personalities are explosive, right? Like me and my younger son are the same person. And with him, he don't even have to be mad at you, but he's like, you disrespected me, you're probably going to pay the price for that. I'm not upset. I just need you to know you can't. That's not okay.
You don't one up me. He's the one, like, you don't one up him.
You're not going to embarrass him. It
could be this small. It could be this small.
Yeah. But you're not going to embarrass him.
That's also my youngest son. Like,
Yeah, that's why they don't hang out, because it's bad. Go ahead, Darryl.
My youngest son, I'm starting to notice, even though he's only 14 months, he's starting to be the same way. Like, they'll fight over certain toys, and if he don't get it, or you take that toy from the both of them, then he gets pissed, man. He starts swiping goldfish all off the coffee table.
Yeah.
He poured chocolate milk out of a sippy cup and throw it, everything like that. Yeah. And I'm starting to realize, like, he got that honest. That used to be me. And one day, man, my dad is like a 5th degree black belt in like 4 or 5 different. Like,
but he's also the slowest human being ever. How are you that precise? But when you see him, it's in slow motion. It's like it's literally like somebody hit the button on the remote and just slowed it down, and everything is like this.
My pop don't rush for nothing.
No. At all.
I asked him, how come you ain't in a rush? He said, man, that bill will be there when I get there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm trying to get his disposition to stay calm like that. As I get older, I'm starting to slowly learn it. But I found out my pop was the same way though. Like, if you going to get hit, then you're just going to get hit. But what I'm learning is that even with my youngest son, you can't get rid of that. You can't try to box that in or close that in. You can only reform that and send it in a new direction. So if you're a fireball, you're passionate, and you feel like you're going to hit something and all that stuff like that, keep that energy, but I need you to aim it at the right way. Even if that right way is physically like a punching bag, or you need to go do some push-ups or some sit-ups or practice martial arts, or if you need to sit with it for a little while and let it come out in like a mental standpoint where you at one point you just over-communicate.
Yeah.
But you need to learn how to redirect that energy. And it's a lifelong discipline. It's not something you just get like that. It takes some time.
I think the important thing is for me is the reaction. I think that so many things happen just in life and you react a certain way. You know what I mean? Your girlfriend, your wife, whoever, your kids, somebody at work, they can approach you with something, and you learn the older you get that your reactions are more expensive. And it's not always necessarily in terms of money, but your reaction can get you fired. You know what I mean? I'm a huge sports fan. Chris Carter was on Fox. He had a show in the morning. They didn't let him go and do the Super Bowl or something like that. He goes in his boss's office. If he was white, this wouldn't happen. He goes in his boss's office, tells him exactly how he feels. They said, that's cool. And I'm glad you told us. Today's your last day. You can go clean your stuff out. Because he was impulsive. Not because what he was saying was even wrong, but because he was impulsive.
Right.
And to be on a syndicated show on a network like Fox every morning is not a small paycheck. I mean, it's probably small to Sean, but for the rest of us, it's not really a small paycheck. So I think I think that for me, I try to find ways to teach them that their emotions aren't wrong, but their reactions will bury them. And your reactions are the thing that you also have to harness. You can feel however you want to feel. You know what I mean? It's almost like the Bible say, be angry and sin not, right? You can feel however you want to feel, but watch your mouth. You know what I mean? Like that's basically, how that kind of goes, right? So Sean, what do you do with, see, if you are not talking to your therapist, what kind of community do you have that you can talk to people about some of the things that you're dealing with at the time, whether it's I don't know, corporate struggles or things going on in your neighborhood or whatever? Because I think therapy is cool. The only problem with going to therapy is you cry watching cartoon movies. The more you go, the more it just comes out, right? So, but what do you do as far as like a from just a community aspect and having people to vent to and talk to and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has to find their outlet. For some people, it's their big brother. For other people, it's their best friend. Yeah. For another person, it could just be a coworker where you have just a similar experience. But for me, a lot of it is in writing. So I journal a lot. I write down a lot of my thoughts when I feel unsafe, when I feel afraid, when I feel happy, or whatever the case is. That's my way of like releasing it. Yeah. But keeping it in is counterproductive. What I was thinking through last week was with the George Floyd situation, the 17-year-old that recorded the video, she was being criticized. She's traumatized, but people were criticizing her for not jumping in. And I started writing about that because I'm thinking to myself, if I were her, the first thing I would do is call 911. Mm-hmm. But what do you do when 911 is right there and there's nobody else to call, right? So I think you got to find safe spaces to like funnel that energy. There are times where you can have a conversation with your spouse, but sometimes that feels like a conflict of interest because the more vulnerable you become there and you have to protect your spouse, the harder it is for you to be honest. You know what I'm saying? Because now you balled up wanting somebody to hold you, and she like, "Yo, what's up? Like, well, who's really doing this here?" You know what I'm saying? So I think it matters. I think everybody needs to have that circle. And we were just on a call last week, and you could just see angry brothers that just didn't know how to process their pain. Yeah. So nobody wanted to do anything, but nobody wanted to say anything, and the easiest thing to escape was sports, but nobody playing nothing right now.
Right.
So we just sitting around in a whole pandemic, and just frustrated. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest outlets for me over time has just been going to the gym. I could be hooping, I could be lifting, I could be doing whatever, but it gives a space where you don't have to be a dad, you don't have to be a spouse, you don't have to be on call for work, you don't have to be like any of those things. Like you can go put your phone in the locker and nothing exists until you're done. But I've noticed a lot of guys just don't really have that. You know what I mean? It's like you become a product of all the things you have to do, and taking care of yourself and the things that you need to and want to do, you don't necessarily get the chance to do, right? And I think protecting that is also like super important. Conversations like these, I think, are important because I remember when we did this first episode, both the guys were like, "Man, I thought I was the only one with these problems." I think the issue with race is that's the one that everybody knows that they fight, but nobody really wants to talk about it past, man, these white people get on my nerves, man. They always bother somebody. You're not wrong, but the conversation has to go deeper than that. It has to go deeper than that. I think when you have something, they're like, I listened to a podcast like last week, and the woman that was on the podcast was saying that there's trauma with little T's. They're not rape, murder, things like that. But they're things that happen to you that you don't necessarily think are trauma until you go back and start to unpack it. I think that a lot of that is the same thing that we're fighting with police. I've had cops encounter me and I can tell they're afraid and I haven't even done anything. Like, how you scared of me and you pulled me over? I was minding my business. If you were scared, why didn't you just stay where you was at? You didn't have to come over here. You know what I mean? Like, that's like people complaining about getting bit by an alligator. Well, if you would have just stayed out the swamp, that wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? You don't need to be scared if you in the house. That's just how I see it. But I think you have um, a rash of people that used to be bullied and they became cops. They didn't have friends. They became cops. I know this one cop, man, we was in high school. He used to be fat and he lost all his weight and then he became a cop. And now what does he do? He harasses people that's working out at night in a park. Like, dog, they're not doing nothing to you, like, at all. But those are the same people that when we were young used to bother him. And now he's a cop. He like, well, now I could do something about it, right? One of the things I want to ask y'all, and I'm going to ask this one time, but I want all y'all to answer it, right? There was a incident with a woman in New York City and a guy, and he was bird watching, and he asked the woman to put a leash on her dog. And she turns out and says, well, this man's attacking me and all this other stuff, right? I was fishing with my kids last week, and a woman gets out of her car with her 4 dogs. Now, why you have 4 dogs anyway is beyond me. That's a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a whole lot to handle. But she gets out and the dogs are running around, and one of them was a husky. If you know anything about huskies, they're very energetic. They're not bad. They're not super aggressive. They're just energetic. They're also very large. Again, my sons are 5 and 2. So we're on the bank of the creek there, and my kids' back are turned, so they don't see the dogs. And I put my hands up and I say, hey, can you grab your dogs? She says, oh, they're fine. They won't bother anybody. I say, yeah, but I have small kids down here, and that could turn out bad if they run or whatever. But before I could open my mouth, my first thought was, man, if I say this the wrong way, this can turn out so bad for something that I'm asking you to do the right thing. How do you turn it on me for me asking you to do the right thing? And what do you do? Because this is the question. What do you do, or what can you do when you're faced with a situation and it's like, all I want is to confront a situation that I'm going to have to confront. But if I use one wrong word, I'm going to be in trouble. Like that, because that's a difficult space, you know what I mean, to be in. And I think that we encounter that a lot, but I don't think we ever really get the opportunity to talk about it because it's a high level of anxiety that's in that moment, whether we want to admit it or not. You know what I mean? And I'll wait for you because you're daddying. Daryl.
Man, that's a tough question. Honestly, that's a tough scenario.
Yeah, I don't have an answer either. I just figured I'd ask y'all.
Yeah, I don't have an answer, and usually I got answers because I do a lot of research, but I don't know because your first instinct is to protect your children. It's like, okay, as a dog and as a dad, you tend to look into the future to see where the problem is and how to get rid of it. Okay, there's a dog, put your dog on a leash, problem solved. But now, like you said, if I say the wrong thing, it can lead into something else, and now I put my children in more of a dangerous situation.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely don't have an answer, man, because
where Caleb at?
Just based off my history, man. Like,
yeah,
honestly, in bad situations, the last thing I do is call the cops. I've been robbed before. I've been in fights and stuff like that. I ain't never called the cops in those situations. And when the cops was called for me, they just made the matters worse. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the challenge because it's like what do you do? You know what I mean? And none of us necessarily would take like the violent approach. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's kind of like what do you do? What about Ant? Any suggestions or no? Yeah, you're
I didn't hear you say Ant. My fault. I mean, there's no real suggestion. I think like what my approach has been, like you said, at the end of the day, you try and protect your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So like at the end of the day, lady, if you want to give me, lack of cooperation, I guess, if that's the word, when I ask you like, all right, at least if you're not going to put your dogs on a leash, like take them to the other side, like there's all this land and opportunity, but you want to be near us and my small kids, like, I mean, I got to also be accepting that I'm going to protect my kids. And I mean, she got to be, accepting of what the results would be if, she can't control her animals.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't necessarily I don't think I got the answer, but I mean, I just
there isn't like one answer though. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's not one answer, because I think every situation can be different. You know, the answer can't be like, what is that called? Mutually exclusive. Like it can't just be one thing. Like it has to be, I think, depending on the situation. But almost like dealing with police, I think, is there a way that you can deal with people that you really, really get your point across? Because I'm going to use Sean as an example, right? Because Sean is a guy that words are his thing. And everybody might not have that same toolbox, though. You know what I mean? And what do you do if your toolbox doesn't equip you with the vocabulary to speak how they speak so they're not offended? If I have a bigger voice, or I'm a larger person, or like I have a bunch of tattoos, I'm already threatening. So my language has to be the thing that changes that. But what do I do if I'm not equipped with that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying, like, I think at the end of the day, I think it's more so just being willing to accept what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, dealing with what comes afterward. I mean, the unfortunate part for us is that there is a possibility that we could, you know, have a fatal situation.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's and the crazy thing is whether it's an interaction with the police, whether it's with some white people that think that they used to be law, or they citizen arrest, whatever.
Yeah, that's
Um,
always funny to me.
you know, and then I say the double-edged sword to it is like, yo, like I'm not as worried about coronavirus as I am worried about somebody in my own community, you know, wanting what they think I have, or something like that, or we just get into a bad situation that day.
Yeah.
You know, so again, it's like, at the end of the day, I think I've been doing better with accepting the fact that I'd rather deal with my consequences with versus somebody else's actions to, you know, my lack of action, kind of thing.
Man, so it's I actually do have the answer changes when my kids is with me. When my children are with me, I'm a different person than when I'm by myself. Like, honestly, when I'm by myself and certain things happen and certain situations pop off, like, it's like, okay, so I'm more inclined to like dive in to the smoke. Like, okay, no, I do want this smoke. I do want this problem, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Whereas when my children are with me, it's like, nah, I gotta look out for them. That's why it is an answer, but it isn't an answer, because I feel obligated, because this is a podcast. This is going to go out on the airwaves to say the right thing, the mature thing.
That's why it's a podcast, not a radio show.
Yeah, but deep inside my heart, it's like, man, it's like, if your dog comes at my kids, you're going to have 3 dogs.
Yeah,
you're not going to have 4 dogs, and that's just going to be that.
Yep.
So, and I understand that I've been battling with this violence thing for a while now, that not, you got to try to handle things amicably and be courteous and stuff like that. But as of lately, this past month, I've been looking at the history of this country and how things go and how things happen. And it seems like only real change comes with violence. Like, I mean, for years, I mean, we've been doing the Kaepernick thing, kneeling and talking and all this stuff like that, and have gotten nothing. You know what I'm saying? And then now we have a couple riots, and now Minnesota's talking about dismantling the whole police force. Rizzo's statue has been removed. Like, we're getting movement. And everybody's like, oh, well, the nonviolent approach is the way to go. Well, and they say, oh, what about Dr. Martin Luther King? Dr. Martin Luther King changes took effect after y'all violently murdered him.
Yeah.
So given the context of this country, it seems like aggression and violence very, very often gets many things done. And it's coming. I'm at a place right now in my life where it's hard to keep the aggression inside, because now it's coming to a point like, I'm ready to, like, me and my wife at one point went to one of the protests they had down here in Delaware, and they out here like, look, this is an unlawful assembly, and we going to use some force and lock some folks up. And like, it was like wisdom was on one side, and then like West Philly was on the other side. Well, let's go ahead with the smoke then, because this is the only way to get things done. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of people are at that same place. And I think the circumstances have lined up to put people in that place even more. Like in Philly, they just released 53.9% of the prison population, put them on the streets with absolutely no job or way to make money or bring income into a family, into a home that they haven't been to for a while. So now they're taken without putting back into that home, and then you stack bricks up in the ghetto and then leave the National Guard downtown. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that seems like a real good recipe that's mixed up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it seems like not only is it encouraged, and it seems like not only is that what society wants, it seems like historically that's what changes society.
Yeah.
Which I know isn't politically correct. And I know I just ventured off from this whole dog story.
No.
It's not.
My bad, but
Rich. Can I
jump in? You can jump in. Go ahead.
Nah, so like you hit on a couple things, cousin. So like the whole the smoke. Nah, that's cousin. That's cousin. The whole jumping into the smoke and all that, like you said, it comes to a point where like you're fed up, and not to mention is you keep watching it happen. So like even to the point like this week, I got clients that are white Caucasian males. And it's like you were saying earlier, like talk about how do you deal with stuff in the workplace, like so like they kind of like not kind of like I've learned now, and I think all this stuff that's happening has now helped me be able to deal with it. They speak to me in a manner as if like I'm the child or not the professional. And I had to learn like they don't necessarily want me to lead them or help them. They just want me to do what they ask me to do or what they think they're telling me to do. So now I have to play this game of keeping my respect, and at the same token courting this client to get them to my goal of my paycheck. One client's spending $800,000, another client he's spending $500,000. You know, that's not the everyday sell. So like I'm trying to be more patient. So like I'll literally write out what I feel in the communication of an email or a text when they're talking to me, because they don't call, they text me. And then I'll like delete all of it. It'll be nice and long because I'll be like, point one, who the f are you talking to? Point two, you know, this is what we're gonna do. This ain't what you want to do. And then I gotta be mindful, like you said about the same thing, like that goes to the dog. Like I gotta make the choice. So it's like teetering the line, but I think I'm also learning it's okay to play the not weak, but to let you feel like you're in control. And as soon as that switch go, you can't. I got to deal with the switch going.
Yeah, you got to deal with that consequence.
Or I got to deal with whatever comes after we do this. What we do, because you didn't like. It's a try to get them that boundaries. Yeah. And I don't know if the boundaries will ever have boundaries with cops per se, or with the system. But I think at some point, like Daryl saying, like, yo, that's not necessarily, I don't think the violence and different stuff is the way, but I think there's got to be something, there's got to be a happy medium to it somewhere that it's going to be some casualties in it. It's going to be. Because, I mean, same thing, like, I don't know all the history but stuff, but, I know all my life throughout school, when we go to these other countries and we go doing what we do, I mean, it's damn near the same thing. We just blowing up stuff and chasing people kind of thing. So it's like, look, it's like you said, it's working for us here. Now y'all want to cooperate a little bit. Now y'all want to get training for police officers.
Yeah, I mean, there is no point in really human history where anybody has been able to say, we respectively requested, that's a lot to say, but we respectfully requested you to stop doing this because we really don't like it and we don't think it's fair. That don't work. I love when people say like, oh, well, I understand your protest, but you can't do it that way. Well, what way would you want? You want me to protest in a way that doesn't make you uncomfortable. Personal change, cultural change, spiritual change is all uncomfortable. There's no way you can change anything and be even remotely comfortable, right? But something that's it's almost hereditary. It's almost hereditary. Something for you to change, you have to shock the people, and you have to shock the system of those people to make them understand that the way things have been is not okay. I think that one of the cool things, I don't agree with lighting the whole world on fire because I'm conflicted with that, right? I'm really conflicted with that, because there's a part of me that says, you know, lighting everything on fire isn't going to change anything. People are just going to look at us different, and they already think we're hoodlums. They already think we can't take care of nothing. They already think all of this stuff, right? But then there's another part of me that's like, man, give them hell. No one cares when you try to be peaceful, and when you try to be peaceful for a very long time, eventually that patience is going to run out. Why ask me to have a patience that doesn't exist? And not only did you not have the same patience with me, you have a preconceived notion that I'm going to do something to you just because I'm walking by you on the sidewalk. So if you can feel that way about me, you can understand why the kid blows up the school because he was bullied, but you can't understand why I blew up a Target because me and everybody that I've ever met have been oppressed to a point that I can't even explain.
Right? It's like, at what point do I get the escape excuse of mental illness?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, because if you think for one moment that folks aren't running around here, black boys and black girls and men and women aren't walking around here with some type of trauma or PTSD or something like that, to where I was in a Black Fathers group on Facebook, and I seen a post, and it was like, what age were you when you first got harassed by police? What age were you when you first got robbed? What age were you when you first had the first gun pointed at you? And it's like, if these are becoming normal conversations, if you think these are normal conversations and it's not without trauma or some type of mental health issue, we should be afforded that same reasoning. That's one. And two, if you have done to me for centuries what I have done to you for a few moments, and you consider those few moments unfair, then what do you consider those the time before that then?
Exactly.
So just co-signing on what you said.
Exactly. That's always been my thing, man. It's always been kind of like, well, what do you want me to do? You know what I mean? I had this conversation with some coworkers today because I wanted to know. I've worked with the same people for a long time, and sometimes the longer you get to know people, the more they let that barrier down, because they don't look at you the way they look at other Black people. They almost sort of start to look at you like you're different than the rest. Not you, but like them, like over there, not you. Because in a way, you've proven yourself to be different than what they think. Right? So my question is, like, at what point, because I sometimes try to educate, but then I find myself saying, I don't think this is productive, right? Some people want to know, some people want to listen, but I don't always find it to be productive, because you already think what you want to think. You already think everything that I'm trying to explain to you. Somebody tried to explain to me that Philadelphia is riddled with gang violence, and I was like, oh, well, that's news to me. He's like, yeah, all these shootings and this and that, like, they're all gang related. Not really. You would be saddened to know that it's a lot of random stuff, and that's what makes it so scary. You know what I mean? If it was gang, he's, oh, well, gangs don't go away. I said, gangs don't go away. What happened to the mafia? Because when's the last time you've heard about the mafia anywhere, right?
Usually, I was going to say, usually murder is a thing of proximity anyway, not necessarily gang violence. So
exactly, me and you know that, but I think that a lot of times people have these perceptions based off of what they've seen on the news and other things, right? So, Sean, do you take the time to educate people because you hear something that they might say, or you pick up on a disposition or whatever? How do you try to educate, and how far do you go with trying to convey, like, the actual truth before it just gets to be at a point where it's like, man, forget it?
Yeah, I mean, communication is my currency.
Mm-hmm.
And the same way that people don't waste money, I don't waste words.
Mm-hmm.
So I always investigate the value of this contribution before I communicate. As you said, some people just want to hear you talk, and I don't have time for that. And then there are other people who are genuinely concerned about leveling up. So I've been posting on Instagram, and I've had many of my white friends DM me like, hey, I don't want to put this in the comments, but I really, really want to know how I can do more. Mm-hmm. Depending on that person, I'll respond with a lengthy response, or I'll just say, I'll be praying for you. Because you can tell when some people just use white guilt as an excuse to pretend to be concerned about something that they don't care about next week.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this earlier. I was going to say, I do flex with my words, but some people flex with their weapon.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I think we really got to be careful of is Black men whom people think are like the talented 10th of Black people. Like, yeah, I will fight you too.
Yeah.
Like I will get out of this car, take off this tie, and mess you up.
Yeah.
You mess with my daughter. Like, imagine that. Imagine George Floyd being anybody in your family with your last name. I'm not coming to a protest, bro. I'm killing you, and I will have a ministry of Paul and Silas, and y'all will have to just get over it. And so, depending on the day, you might get a different version of me. And the more we show ourselves as brothers, it's like, yo, I get it. Like, that's not me today, but tomorrow I could be in that same space. So that's my barometer. Like, in conversation, even with this conversation right now, a lot of people have hit me up saying like, hey, we want to have a conversation. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a waste of my time. And so I'll politely decline. But then when I feel like this has the right intention, that's what I give my time and attention to.
Yeah. It's sometimes tough to navigate that, because I'm a person that if you're asking me, I want to help you understand because I know that any sort of change or progression comes from understanding first. And if you don't, I had a coworker explain to me that he didn't like one of the presidential candidates because they wanted to pay teachers more money. And he was saying that in where he lives near a principal and a vice principal. Like, they husband and wife live across the street. They retired at like 50 and they have a bunch of money. And he's like, so from where I sit, teachers don't need more money. And I said, well, the problem is where you sit isn't where everybody else sits. I said, I know teachers that have to get part-time jobs after teaching these bad little kids all day long that don't belong to them, that's disrespectful, the whole nine. Some of them are entitled. Some of them don't have parents at home. It's a lot to handle. And then you have to get off and go work in a stockroom at Wine and Spirits because your full-time job isn't paying you any money. But the fact that he didn't have that small bit of information changed his, or it guided his decision on something that impacted everybody. And I felt like without me explaining that, like, nah, bro, like we can get on the phone right now and I can call a bunch of teachers that I know, and I guarantee you they don't make $40,000 a year just because they're teaching in the more difficult districts, or they're teaching in the city, or whatever the case might be. So I try to educate, you know what I mean? Or I try to explain the other side, because I don't really get offended at the responses. I can have the conversation without being offended, but it's a tough line for me to navigate where it's like, yo, I'm listening to you, but watch your mouth. Like, you can express to me that you know how you feel about something, or that you don't agree with something or whatever. But just because we're cool doesn't mean that you're no longer talking to a grown-up Black man.
Right.
You know what I mean? And one of the biggest things that I found myself recently trying to explain the differences of is a quick story. I had an incident where I was pulling into my driveway, and I get out. I go to get the things out of my trunk, and the cop pulls into my driveway behind me, gun out, flings the door open, get back in the car. Turn around like, well, I live here. He literally says to me, I'll be the judge of that. What I own this house. You don't get to tell me where I live. You know what I mean? I own this house. He's like, get back in the car. I said, all right, since you got your gun out, I guess this is really going to be a good conversation for me. I get in the car, put the windows down, throw the keys out. Y'all know the whole thing, right? So I look up, here come 2 more cop cars. So I said, well, what's going on? Well, why were you running from me? How am I running from you and I didn't even know you were coming? That's the first thing. And if I'm running from you, why would I take the time to get the things out of my trunk to continue on my on my run here? Like, I'm not OJ, my man. I'm not gonna run from you in slow motion. If I'm running, I'm out. You know what I mean? And he insisted that I was running from him, even and that I was speeding. The reason he was pulling me over was because I was speeding and I was trying to evade an officer. I explained that story to a coworker of mine, and the first thing out of his mouth was, he has rights. He can't come on your property. Yeah, well, in the moment, you think I was going to tell him that? just like that. Like it reminded me of like Dave Chappelle. He's like, you can't say that. He's like, oh yes, I can. I'll handle this. It doesn't work that way for us. And I think that sometimes people have a delusion that it's the same and we're making this up. And to me, that's the scary part. Because if you, the mayor of Norristown put out a statement saying that he's tired of people making it seem like Black people are underprivileged. And the only reason we're underprivileged is because we don't go and do what we're supposed to do. It's pretty difficult to make something of yourself when you're dead.
Mm.
It's kind of hard, right? It's kind of hard to raise a family. We're all in our children's lives. You know, right. I'm in my children's lives to a point so much I get on their nerves in their sleep when they first wake up in the morning. Like they get tired of me. But at the end of the day, like it's because I'm here. It's kind of difficult to not control them, but it's kind of difficult to guide them if I don't have the opportunity to just simply be here, right?
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about the importance of setting them up for later and being around to sort of see that later. Because to me, my only responsibility when I leave home is to get back. It's not to have a successful day at work. It's not to do anything extravagant. It's literally to just make it back. And anything in between that gets in the way of me making it back is going to catch all kinds of hell because I need to make it back. So, Ant, talk to me a little bit about, because you're the property guy, right? So talk to me a little bit about how important you feel it is to set your sons up for later and some of the things that you might do to sort of springboard them in a way that you might not necessarily have had.
Right. So, I mean, it goes to what you just touched on, like, yo, my job is to make it home so I can see what they do later in life. And then, like what Sean was saying, like that anxiety or that nervousness of what am I doing to put them in position to win? So, I mean, between the schooling that they're getting, the other after school activities that they do, and then just as far as me, I feel like it's my duty to put them in position with the properties. You know, real estate is what I know. I feel like it's the best vehicle to get you to your goal, whether you want to be actively in real estate or passively in real estate. So like each of my children, each own a property now. My one son owns a lot. My other son owns a house. The goal is by the time they're 18, 20, those houses will be worth that much more that they can start their journey in life. And I can hopefully help them, you know, not blow the money on cars, rims, and clothes, but create other assets and vehicles.
Don't be like me and Sean, because
nah, I know when I first got my little bit of money when I was younger, first thing I got the car with the you know, with the DVD player, you know, got the Windows 10 and was like, damn, I only got like how much money left from this situation.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, what I know now is like, yo, you could have got the hoopty and still been just as good, and you know, the rest of the money could have went to an investment. And I think that's the other thing about even just positioning them how to deal with police, but positioning them in life. So like both my kids are brainwashed. Like my youngest, he loves doing stuff hands-on with construction and building things. So I mean, look, you could be an engineer, you can, you know, run the job site, whatever. And my oldest son, he's all about delegation. I don't know why, but he already into delegation. And you know, he like, yo, I got showing houses. He ride around the city with anybody, he'll tell you like, yo, that's my showing house, that's my other house, or that's this. I'm like, that's your house, huh? That's, like, that's the house, right? That's what we do. So I mean, they already are in position to think that we you know, we do real estate. And that's the way that it's not a guessing game. It's second nature to them that, yo, real estate is the way for us. That's how we provide.
So Sean, what does your strategy look like for her future? Because your career is a bit off the typical beaten path, right? So there's no 401k, you know what I'm saying, for what you do. So talk a little bit about the way you structure the way you structure things for your daughter's future.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we haven't brought up is the word privilege. And I think that's a huge line of demarcation when you talk about races. So Ivanka Trump can wake up in a household with millionaires. The Kardashians, you can have a child right now and you wake up and your mama and now your daddy turned mama is a millionaire. So now I'm trying to learn the lessons so that she doesn't have to be in school twice. I'm trying to give her in my life what I did not get in education.
Yeah.
And all these degrees, nothing really taught me financial literacy. I had to learn that the hard way. So that's my strategy, to do some of that. Like, yes, I want to expand your lexicon. I want to teach you words. We want to learn different languages, but also I need to teach you savings. I need to teach you investment. We need to talk about the stocks. We need to talk about what's a wise expenditure and what's not. And that's just a part of the baseline. And then raising her to know that your value is beyond your clothing.
Yeah.
Like really pouring into her love and esteem, because the more I value her, the more a man cannot mistreat her. And he can't use his money or his anything to deter her from her internal value. So the future looks like, for me, taking that college fund, using that appropriately, and creating ways for her to have a cushion, because it's not as easy for me as it would somebody else who has a typical 9 to 5.
Right. What's the line for giving her what she wants, right? So I don't know how you're going to answer this at all, right? So like, this is not a loaded question. I'm just curious.
Nah, I can already tell that question was. It sounded like it was loaded when you said so. Not everything she wants, like
because my question is, I think that a lot of people that have some sort of a success, like, or are just somewhat comfortable, right? Like, I think you get it's difficult when you say, I can buy you whatever you want. And having a daughter is different than having sons, because sons, like, you're almost always like disciplined and like all the time, except for Ant. His sons just do what they want. But like me and Daryl are a little bit more like like structured and disciplined, right? But
I can imagine, baby.
I can imagine, here for a good time, not a long time, right? So I think that when you have a daughter, though, and I honestly don't know this, and I would be terrible, but when you have a daughter, what is the line for giving her what she wants, teaching her how to invest her money, but also not making her spoiled to a point where like she's almost impossible when it comes to dating or marriage or whatever, because that is a real thing. And I don't know if a lot of people think about that. But most people just want to give, say yes all the time because she's a girl.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about earlier, like overcompensating out of guilt. So I had this habit when she came with daddy, we would go to the mall, we would buy a gift. And then every time we went to the mall, she expected a gift. I'm like, no, we're getting sneakers. No, we're getting food, And so there are ways to do that where she learns discipline and it kills entitlement. Like, I want her to know you can have the world, but I also want her to know you don't need the world.
Right.
And so that's the line for me. Now, if she asks me with the pretty face, I'm gonna give it to her. But I gotta man up and pretend like I'm not being motivated by that, because I really want her to have discipline and boundaries. But I will tell you, when you have a girl and you see yourself in that beautiful girl and she's walking to you and calling you daddy, it's a hard balance to strike, bro.
I'm sure.
But I'd rather her have to be pulled back because she got whatever daddy gave her than for her daddy not to set a standard and then she accept whatever anybody else gives her.
Yeah, I think that's good though, because I think even I think even with having sons, you have to be careful on the opposite end, that you're not too hard on them all the time, that you're not always thinking discipline, like they're still children, and they need that tender side of you too, because if you don't give that to them, then they grow up in a world that's already harsh, not knowing that you can be tender and be powerful at the same time. I think that we always look at having power as a sense of what you can do, and having a point to prove with it, instead of realizing that kind of like being a powerful person and being a person that's in control is really what you want to be. You know what I mean? That having that power, knowing what I can do and knowing that I also don't have to, and there's no reason for me to prove it to you, is important, because I think that guides how you spend your money. It guides where you even sometimes want to live. You know what I mean? And I think that when you find a way to express that and teach that to them, it's super, super important, right? So Dara, you have 3 sons and a daughter, right? And your twins are both boys?
Yep. Legend and Levi, both boys.
Right. I remember now.
They're not identical, and they are very, very different. Very different. Yeah. But
So,
mhm.
so when trying to be their uh, disciplinarian, because as a dad, like you got to be the one to to discipline, but you also have to be the one to be the friend at the same time.
Right.
So how do you navigate that? Because with 4 personalities, that's a lot.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's easy for me because one kid is like me and the other one isn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's easy.
So, I mean, really, I do the same thing actually with all 4 of them, man. Like if I discipline them, I make sure that I make sure I do the same thing my dad actually did with me, which is if you're getting disciplined, I'm explaining exactly why I'm
Yeah.
disciplining you. And when I say discipline, I don't mean necessarily a spanking, because I actually don't whoop my daughter.
Yeah.
Because all I have to do is raise my voice like just half a decibel than normal and stare at her eyes, and then she just breaks down and starts crying and feels bad and apologizes and wants a hug.
Mhm.
So once I discipline, like I just immediately follow it up with love,
Yeah.
because like, I'm doing my duty. I'm doing what I have to do to make sure that you're going in the right path in the right direction. And I'm doing it out of love, and I love you. And,
Yeah.
and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same
So
thing.
I want to transition to one quick thing, and I'm going to try to use this as a wrap up for my shows going forward. If you guys know anything about me, I am a avid whiskey drinker, right? And I think it's just a cool way to end the day, right? So I know I'm going to have some smart comments tomorrow from Sean in public on Instagram, and so I'm just going to have to block them. But so I want to do a segment called Whiskey and Wisdom, and I think that this is a portion where we can drop a little bit of information on somebody that might be listening, somebody that's going to be watching, and give them something to kind of take home. Because this is a lot to unpack with everything that's going on. And whether you have children or you don't, you're Black, white, Indian, whatever you are, I think that having a message from one of us to pass on to another person, trying to navigate the times that we're in and maybe the future, would be kind of good to share. So I'm gonna give everybody like a minute to just drop a little bit of a wisdom nugget to kind of help somebody that might be having a difficult time with their feelings or emotions with all of this or whatever. We'll start with Ant.
I was gonna say, I think it's simple for me in regards to, you touched on all of y'all touched on a lot of points today. At the end of the day, just be you and don't be scared to be you.
Mhm.
And just believe it to the fullest. Like, you got to have that conviction out here, good, bad, or indifferent, whether dealing in, adversity or dealing, when you're on your high. But just know, like, every day is a new day, and you will be okay at the end of the day. What's for you will be for you. But at the end of the day, just live it to the fullest, and believe. Like, I think that's the biggest thing, even as an adult now that I'm working on, like, having that conviction 200%, and beyond. Like, I'm a win one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So I just would say definitely believe at the end of the day.
Gotcha. We'll go to Dow next.
I would probably say you are responsible for shaping your reality, and you have the power to shape your reality.
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing in my house. I shape my children's reality, and I determine what is normal for them. So for my son, his belief is your income should exceed your expenses. Your assets should outweigh your liabilities. That's not an option. That's in your mind. That's what you're going to live by.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the power to shape what is normal, you have the power to shape what your character, your morals are built off of. You have that power, and you should always be conscious to exercise that power to move in the most positive and progressive manner from now until the end of your life.
That's good, Sean. I've saved the bishop for last.
Cut it out. So my word of encouragement is you are doing a good job. I think sometimes, especially as men, we have so many goals and we don't take enough time to just pat ourselves on the back and congratulate ourselves for where we are. And when I look at the book of Genesis and how God made the earth in 7 days, each day he paused to say, you know what? That was good. He didn't wait till the seventh day to evaluate everything and say, all right, finally I made it. And I think what I would ask everybody who's listening to do is to just pause today and just congratulate yourself for what you've already done. Like, celebrate small victories. Maybe every debt isn't paid, but at least you paid off one credit card. Maybe your baby mama drama is still not together, but at least y'all still alive to work it out. Whatever you are doing and wherever you are in life, like it's so much outside in the world telling you what you're not. Just give yourself your own party and say, like, yo, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to thank all of y'all for joining me. I know a little bit over time, but I think it was important to be able to share and express and all of that. So if you can go around real quick, everybody give like your social media, where you can find you, things like that. And then I'll let you guys go. We'll start with Ant, because I know he's got a training session in a few minutes.
I want to appreciate you for bringing me back on, man. I always appreciate connecting with y'all. But Anthony Lee, A Lee Real Estate on Instagram, and also A Lee Real Estate on YouTube, and just Anthony Lee on Facebook.
Gotcha, Daryl.
I'm gonna plug the business again. You can reach the business at TC Breakthrough on Instagram as well as Twitter and Facebook. My social media is for me. So
it sounds good to me. Sean.
Yep, SeanSaunders.com and Sean Saunders 7. My company's name is Finish Your Book, and that's where you can find me.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.